And so I thought that would be a great thing to talk about today, because not only does it weaken the immune system, you know, our community is plagued with diabetes, overweight, and being overweight. So I thought it would be a great topic to talk about today. And so we're going to talk about sugar, okay? So welcome to today's seminar, and the agenda will be, I'm going to talk to you about what is sugar, how the body metabolizes sugar, how sugar is processed in the brain, diseases caused by sugar, how to make changes, and we're going to have a 30-minute Q&A at the end of the presentation. Okay, so what is sugar? I have listed up here monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Now, that's a big word that you're going to have to know, because we're going to break it down to something, to layman's term, to where you can identify and understand, and when you're in the store, be able to spot sugars when you're shopping. So I'm going to start this video that's going to tell you what sugar is.
What's up, dudes, and what's up, ladies? Right again, in this video, we are going to discuss the types of carbohydrates. We're going to go over the 3 different types of carbohydrates, the pros and cons to each type, as well as which carbohydrates are best to consume. So, let's roll. So, what are the different types of carbohydrates? The answer to this question depends on who you ask.
Are you sharing your screen?
Can you see?
Good.
Oh, no.
In this video, I'm going to classify.
Give me one moment.
Yes, we just see you right now. Okay, it looks like
Okay.
it's about to start.
Here we go. Do you see my screen?
It's coming. This is Carolyn has started sharing her screen. There we are.
There we are. Okay. So let me
Okay.
back up. Ooh. Sorry about that.
No
And we
problem.
were doing this before the presentation. Okay. So what is sugar?
What's up, dudes, and what's up, ladies? Brian again, and in this video we are going to discuss the types of carbohydrates. We're going to go over the 3 different types of carbohydrates, the pros and cons to each type, as well as which carbohydrates are best to consume. So, let's roll. So, what are the different types of carbohydrates? The answer to this question depends on who you ask. Some common classifications would be healthy and unhealthy, good and bad, slow and fast. In this video, I'm going to classify them as simple, complex, and fibrous. Before we get into those classifications, we need to look at molecules. I know, fun stuff, but it'll help you understand better. A monosaccharide is a single molecule, such as fructose, which is found in fruit. A disaccharide consists of 2 monosaccharide molecules, such as sucrose or table sugar, and a polysaccharide consists of many monosaccharide molecules, such as whole grain pasta. Now that we have that out of the way, let's look at simple carbohydrates. Simple carbohydrates are made up of mono and disaccharides, 1 or 2 molecules. Some foods include fruits, milk, and foods with high amounts of added sugars. Typically, simple carbohydrates are easily absorbed into the bloodstream because of their simple molecular structure. However, when you obtain simple carbohydrates from whole foods, they are usually combined with vitamins, minerals, and fiber, which slows down the digestive process. Now let's look at complex carbohydrates. Complex carbohydrates are composed of polysaccharides. So, because of their more complex molecular structure, they can take longer for the body to break down and digest, like whole grains and vegetables. However, some complex carbohydrate foods have been processed, which strips them of some of their natural, high fiber content, as well as vitamins and minerals, so they're digested faster and more easily. So, with both simple and complex carbohydrates, I've mentioned fast and slow digestion. Why is that important? 3 reasons. Number 1, it's going to make you feel fuller longer. Rapid digestion means hunger returns quicker, which leads to more consumption. Number 2, typically slower digested foods cause lower blood level spikes. And number 3, slower, longer digestion means that the body is using more energy over a longer period of time to break down the food, which is an increase or boost in metabolism. Next up is fiber. Fiber is parts of plants that cannot be digested. I have a separate video that looks deeper into fiber that I will link in the little eye in the upper right-hand corner of your screen. So the question is, which type of carbohydrates should you eat? Well, it's actually really easy to answer. All three types. See, don't focus on the types. Instead, focus on carbohydrates that have been minimally processed, like whole grains, fruits, vegetables, that contain fiber, vitamins, and minerals, and of course, anything from Dairy Queen. I'm just messing with you folks. But seriously, try to minimize the amount of processed foods. It's okay to eat foods you love. I actually love cookie dough blizzards from Dairy Queen, but I don't eat them all the time. It's always about moderation. All right. If you have any questions or comments, you can leave them below.
Okay, so now that we know what sugars are just carbohydrates. Okay? They break down into energy into the body. So carbohydrate sugars are used in muscle contraction, temperature regulation, metabolizing fats, preventing the body from using protein as energy, and energy for every cell in the body. Now, the brain is so rich in nerve cells or neurons, it is the most energy demanding organ, using 1/2 of all of the sugar energy in the body. So when we think about sugar, we usually want to say, okay, we don't want to eat sugar. We try our best not to eat a lot of sugar, but your body needs sugar in order for it to function. But we need the proper sugar in order for it to function. So we're going to do a quick recap of the video. So I like to break it down to where it's easy for you to understand. So when you're in the store, you're not thinking, okay, monosaccharides and disaccharides. We have no clue. So when we're in there and we're looking for foods, we want whole foods, healthy, slow. The process is healthy and slow. Simple and complex carbohydrates from whole foods. This is what we want to eat. Why? Because they have vitamins, minerals, and fiber, and it slows down digestion. The sugar into the bloodstream slowly. So that's pretty much like you having a slow drip. So that's how in the beginning, I began to understand it as a slow drip. So I have energy for a longer period of time. The sugar is going into my bloodstream into slow drips. So you feel fuller, lower blood level spikes. Your blood level will spike, but it won't be as high, and boost metabolism. Now, unhealthy and fat. So if you're eating processed foods, which are simple and complex carbohydrates, they have no nutritional value. So it's going straight into your bloodstream. And that's just like you turn on the water fountain and water just flowing straight through. So it's a constant flow. You're going to be hungry within hours. There's going to be a spike in your blood level and your energy is going to drop. Just like when you have that candy bar, you get it for maybe an hour or two. But after that hour or two, your energy drops and you're ready to eat again, and you're hungry. So we want to make sure we're selecting the proper food. So some healthy carbs would be, of course, he said vegetables, fruits, beans, brown rice, quinoa, wheat, and oats. You want to stay away from processed foods, anything white bread, cakes, cookies, bakery items, white flour, and some cereals. Okay, so how the body metabolizes sugar. Okay, give me 1 second. Okay, so there's a little diagram here, and I'm just going to talk through this, and it pretty much goes through the diagram of what you see. So glucose is absorbed in the GI tract into the blood, and then it's taken into the cells in our body. Glucose in the blood stimulates the pancreas to release insulin. Insulin will in turn off fat burning and promote glucose burning. Excess glucose is stored as glycogen in muscles and lipids in our fat tissue. Now for fructose, it's also taken up in the blood, from the gut. The liver serves as a pre-processing organ. The liver releases glucose and fat into the blood or stores it as glycogen or fat deposits, which causes fatty liver disease, increase of diabetes, and cardiovascular disease. So we want to stay away from fructose. which is what you see in the majority of the foods that are on your counters today. So I have a quick question. Do any of you guys think that you are addicted to sugar? Yes, no, maybe?
I used to be.
And I'm going to tell you a little story after the video, but if you look at this picture, this little dog is just so up. And it says, addicted to sugar? Cool, I'm fine. There's nothing wrong with a little sugar. So when I found that picture, I thought of a coworker that I worked with. And I'm going to tell you a story about her in a minute, but I'm going to show you this video on why sugar is poisonous. Okay.
Sugar addiction is a real problem. However, I've noticed that a lot of people don't seem to realize that every time they ingest sugar, or any food containing sugar, what they're actually doing is poisoning themselves. Over and over again, research has proven that sugar is more addictive than cocaine, and that every time you eat a chocolate bar or take a super sweet Starbucks coffee, you increase the likelihood of you developing one of these many diseases: cardiovascular disease, type 2 diabetes, cancer, obesity, and much, much more. So, in this video, I'm not only going to discuss sugar addiction and the damage it does to your body, but practical steps to help you break this deadly addiction. We've always been told that sugar has many negative effects, both for the body and mind. Weight gain, metabolic syndrome, type 2 diabetes, high blood pressure, and heart disease are among the major complications of chronic consumption of excessive sugar. But how's this addiction established? According to Dr. Robert Lustig, a pediatric endocrinologist who's best known for his work promoting anti-sugar diets, sugar, in the forms of sucrose and fructose, is like poison due to its negative effects on the neurotransmitter systems of the body. This addiction can be explained as a cycle, perpetually becoming stronger and stronger every single time we ingest and consume sugar. When sugar is consumed into the body, blood sugar levels spike, releasing high amounts of opioids and dopamine in the brain, which gives you a tremendous, satisfying sensation. This process is called reward. Meanwhile, acetylcholine levels, that's another neurotransmitter, are diminished, a process which intervenes in tolerance. After this, high levels of insulin are produced by the pancreas to decrease your glycemic levels, which results in a rapid fall. This causes immediate fat storage by the cells to occur. The cycle continues with the craving for more sugar to replenish its loss, along with a displeasurable sensation. With time, your body will increase the amount of sugar you consume in order to increase the release of opioids and dopamine levels that are giving you that same satisfying sensation you had in the beginning. This whole cycle leads to compulsive eating and binging, making this addiction even more difficult to break. As stated before, chronic abuse of sugar is proven to lead to some pretty serious diseases. Type 2 diabetes is the best example of one of the negative side effects of this addiction. Consuming high amounts of sugar leads to massive production of insulin by the pancreas. After several years of over-consuming sugar and overproducing insulin, the pancreas begins its degenerative process, diminishing the insulin levels you produce. Due to this, higher and higher levels of glycemia presence lead to the appearance of type 2 diabetes and its complications. Normally, the liver turns sugar into fat, storing it. But with this condition, the excessive storage of sugar leads to a disease called fatty liver, which results in the dysfunction of every liver process. With time, high amounts of sugar in the bloodstream will affect the vascular system, leading to high blood pressure and heart disease. A common complication of diabetes is diabetic neuropathy, a condition that results in the damage of small blood vessels that nourish nerves, which leads to a series of symptomatology that can conclude with an amputation. But the complications of sugar addiction don't only affect the body, they also affect the mind. When high levels of blood sugar are stored by the cells, opioids and dopamine levels also fall, producing a severe sensation of fatigue and displeasure. This feeling can lead to abnormal behavior that can only be countered with the consumption of higher and higher levels of sugar. I know this is a lot of information to take in, but I wanted you guys to know the harmful effects you're doing to yourselves every time you take sugar. We can live and thrive without sugar. Our ancestors did. But today, sugar is in everything we eat. The multi-billion-dollar food industry doesn't want you to give up sugar. Their sales depend on it. That's why they sneak sugar into everything, labeling those foods as low-fat or free from artificial flavors. Although those statements might be true, they're simply masking sugar-laden products with a false claim that they're healthy and good for you. For example, from just one serving of iced tea, you'll end up with nearly 9 teaspoons of sugar. A single cup of 245 milligram low-fat yogurt contains about 12 teaspoons of sugar. And for all you coffee lovers, a flavored coffee drink can contain as much as 25 teaspoons of sugar. That's shocking, right? So, if you want to overcome this addiction, here are a few things you can do. Number 1, clean your house. Start your recovery process by removing all sugar and processed foods and donate them or throw them in the trash. With this, you'll reduce temptations and make it much harder to give in to your craving. Search through your cupboards, pantry, and kitchen for all those unhealthy and sugary snacks and drinks and take control of the situation. Number 2, substitute your sweets for whole fruits. Fruits can be a very satisfying treat. Plus, they're full of vitamins and micronutrients. But be careful with the amount you consume because some of these have high sugar content. For this reason, avoid grapes or cherries. Number 3, drink plenty of water. It's well known that chronic dehydration can increase sugar cravings, slow down your metabolism, and stimulate fat storage. You should drink a minimum of 8 glasses of water every day. Number 4, eat balanced meals. Consume the nutrients that your body craves with healthy meals. Remember to have carbohydrates, proteins, and fats in every meal. Prepare healthy snacks and carry them to have in the morning and afternoon. Number 5, lower your stress levels. Do regular physical activity, yoga sessions, and meditation. These activities will consume the extra sugar in your body and at the same time will liberate that annoying stress which can lead to more cravings. Also, you need at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep per day. So, there you have it, guys. Overcoming your sugar addiction is a sure way to a healthier and more energetic life. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you on the next one.
Okay, now, my friend in the video, he said something that I don't particularly agree with. I'm not saying go throw anything away out of your cabinet. I don't believe in throwing away food, but I do believe in you can start bringing in those healthier foods that are less in sugar into your home. So use up what you have and then start incorporating those foods that have less sugar in them. Now, I told you I was going to tell you a story about this picture of the dog. So I started a job, and this is an HR journalist, right? So we're upstairs, and I'm a morning person. So I'm sitting there working. This happened between 7 and 7:30 in the morning. So I'm sitting there working. My coworker comes in and she's walking by me and I'm like, "Good morning, so-and-so." She walks by. I'm like, "Okay." So as she started to turn in front of me, I said, "Celia, good morning." She turns and she looks at me and she keeps walking. Okay, so I'm like, okay, now I know you're not gonna look at me and not speak. So by this time, I'm typing like 3,000 words a minute. Like, I know she didn't not speak to me. And now let me put a disclosure in. This is pre-Jesus in my life. So just so you know. So I'm like, I know she didn't talk to me. So meanwhile, she's going to her desk and another coworker sees my reaction and she jumps up and she runs over to me. She's like, "Oh, no. It's okay. She just needs to go get a Coke." And I was like, "She need a soda?" She didn't speak to me because she needed a soda. So she said, "Yeah, she's really, really sweet." I say, "Okay, I'm gonna let her prove that to me." So she goes back to her desk. And I see that the lady, Celia, when she came in, she left. So I'm just going about my business. So she comes up around me again. So she comes to my desk, and as she's approaching me, she has 2 16-ounce bottles of Coke. One she has already finished. So as she comes up to me, she's screwing the cap on one, and then she had the nerve to put it in my trash. So I'm like, "Wait a minute, you're not gonna speak to me, and then you're gonna come and try and dispose of your trash at my cubicle? Who are you?" So, and listen, this is a true story. And so after she drops it in, she's like, "Good morning, Carolyn. How are you today?" I'm like, "Oh, wait, hold up. And who might you be?" She's like, "Oh, we have a meeting today." And and she was just talking. And I'm thinking, okay, you left here sending and you come back begging. This is too much for me at 7:30 in the morning. And so she was just, and the whole day, just sweet as she could be. She's like, I was like, so did you not hear me when I spoke to you this morning? And she said, well, yes, I did. But honestly, I just could not get past the thought that I needed to go get a soda. I needed to go get a soda because I was running late. And I didn't realize she normally comes in with the large Coke from McDonald's every morning. And so she's like, I really needed to get a soda. And I was like, okay, well, I'm glad that I know that. But you could have gave me a hand up or something to let me know you heard me, because that was a little rude. And so she's like, no, I don't mean it. I don't mean it. I just have to have my soda in the morning. I'm like, okay, that's fine. So I was at this job for about almost 3 years. This woman drank sodas around the clock. It was so bad. She had them stacked in the file room. She had sodas in her drawer. She had sodas everywhere. So I asked, I was like, okay, so you're not a diabetic with all this soda? She's like, no. And I was like, okay, well, have you ever tried to stop? Because that's really a lot of soda consumption. You're gonna make yourself sick. And so she said, yeah, I tried to stop before, but it just didn't happen. And so I was like, well, you know, it's hard. I know you're addicted. And so she says, I tried, and I said, it's not gonna happen. So I just pray that that God will bless my body. And I'm like, well, okay, that's a whole nother story there. So she goes on for the 2 years, and I was like, well, and within a year, she did cut back. And I said, well, have you ever thought, we work in HR, have you ever thought about going to EAP? They can hook you up with somebody that can help you, right? And so she said, I did that before. This woman was so addicted to soda. I don't know where she is today, but she was so addicted. And so by the time I left, that Coca-Cola monkey was still on her back. And I just prayed that she got help with it, because I know drinking soda, and I never saw her drink a glass of water, a cup of water. I never saw her drink water. So can you imagine what her body is going through? And I'm like, well, we even go to the doctor, because if you've been doing this for years, you are bound to be a diabetic on top of everything else that you're eating. And so she really kind of didn't feel like she was addicted. She was like, I just like to have them. But I was like, but you can't go without them. That's addiction. There's a difference. And so that's why I asked, do you think that you're addicted to sugar? Because sometimes we don't really think about it, because we just, okay, I just have a candy bar. I'll just have a candy bar. But when you're having a candy bar 2 or 3 times every day, you're addicted. If you're having headaches, you are a completely different person. If you don't have that Coke, if you don't have that candy bar, you are addicted. So at some point in time, we need to stop. We need to reevaluate. We need to be mindful. We need to think, okay, do I need these things? Now, I'm not saying you're maybe addicted to this extent, but you have to think and see, okay, am I eating more than I should? Okay. And now many of you, and not everyone is addicted. You may have sugar cravings, which could be some nutritional deficiencies due to the reason why you're having cravings. But many cravings stem from a blood and sugar imbalance. So craving sweets is the first sign that the body needs more protein. So you need to make sure you're getting balanced meals. So it helps your blood sugar steady. Therefore, lack of protein sends your glucose levels all over the place, causing you to crave a quick fix of candy. Now, some nutritional things that could be going on. You can have low zinc, calcium, chromium, or magnesium. Zinc is needed for proper insulin and glucose utilization. So taking a daily zinc supplement, or having pumpkin seeds, almonds, which are rich in zinc. So there's ways to to take care of our sugar cravings that are healthy. Okay, so how does the brain react to sugar? Okay, memory, we have issues with our memory. We have decreasing insulin in the brain leads to brain fog. There's a lot of times we just can't recall things, and that's due to having too much sugar. Increases in dementia. Anxiety, overstimulation of serotonin can trigger anxiety symptoms and depression. overstimulation of serotonin can cause depletion of neurotransmitters, contributing to depression. And I read a story recently that talked about teenagers that, not a story, but a scholarly article that talked about teenagers who committed suicide, and they found that many of the children who did commit suicide, they had a great overconsumption of sugar, and a lot of them ended up having depression. And our children today, we know they don't eat about really at school. They don't really have good meals, and they're eating snacks 24/7 all day long. So that's also something we need to watch out in regards to our children. And I know I'm giving this information to you guys, but we also need to be implementing these things in our children's lives, because as they grow older, we teach them how to eat. We teach them how to be productive citizens. We teach them how to behave properly and out in public. We teach them what to eat. And so we have to start making changes at home and implementing these things so that our children can see how they're supposed to eat. Okay, some diseases that are caused by sugar. We have cancer. Studies show that the activation of sugar-based metabolism in cell driven by high sugar quantities on the cell membrane actually causes cancer to form in the first place. The American National Center of Biotechnology Information found that those who ate a diet with a high glycemic load increased their chances of developing prostate cancer by almost 30%, rectal cancer by 44%, and pancreatic cancer by 41%. Those are pretty high numbers for me. And when we're talking about a food, sugar, something it's that we're ingesting ourselves. And also those people who have had bouts with cancer, who are in remission, the one thing that you really should stay away from is sugar, because you can eat right, eat everything, have a clean diet. But if you're still consuming those sugars, that is the way that it's going into your cells and it brings the cancer back. Liver disease. Liver is the only one that can break down fructose. They turn sugar into fat in a process called lipogenesis. Over time, when given enough fructose, fat droplets start to accumulate in the liver cells, which ultimately results in non-alcoholic liver disease. The effect is the same, much the same as that of alcohol, as an alcoholic who has a fatty liver. And I think that's quite telling of really how damaging sugar is, that it can cause the same type of disease as being an alcoholic, as over-consuming alcohol, And so we think about drugs and nicotine and things like that as really harmful to the body, but we don't really understand. I think sometimes we don't understand or realize that our food today is not just food. There are food scientists that are in the lab creating, not just to provide food for the masses, but also to, as in the video he said, to make a profit. So it's not necessarily about providing you the best food that they can provide. It's about what can I cook up, in so many words, that can fulfill the need that I need, which is financially and to feed the masses. Overweight and obesity. Okay, this is largely due to sugar fructose found mainly in fruit juices, wheat products, and high fructose corn syrup, which is most commonly added to foods by manufacturers as it is sweeter and cheaper than sucrose table sugar. There's no hormone to remove fructose from the bloodstream. Very few of our body cells can make use of it. Therefore, it is left to the liver to remove it. When the liver is overwhelmed by too much of this sugar, it converts it into fat, which ultimately leads to insulin resistance, hardening of the arteries, and of course, obesity. High fructose levels can block the transport of leptin from the blood to the brain, making it incorrectly believe that the body needs to eat more and burn less in order to replenish our fat stores. So in 2020, it's projected that 83% of men and 72% of women will be overweight or obese. Currently, 72% of men and 63% of women are overweight or obese. And another statistic that I did not put in here, which I would have, was concerning our children. Our children are now more obese because they're drinking more fruit juices. They're eating more sweets. They're not getting any activity. They're either at home on a computer or they're asleep. And granted, it's hot outside. So I doubt many of them are outside playing, but there's no activity. And so many of our children are overweight and obese. Diabetes, most of us know the sugar, right? Okay, if you consume a diet constantly high in sugar, grains, and processed foods, your blood glucose levels will be chronically elevated. The pancreas then becomes overworked and even damaged. The body becomes desensitized to insulin, and the end result is insulin resistance and eventually full-blown diabetes. So here I have a chart for you that shows you the ranges in regards to if you're hypoglycemic, if you have your A1Cs are good, or your hypoglycemia, or if you have diabetes. So you want to make sure your range is between 5 and 6. Okay, that's excellent. Now, if you're pre-diabetic, it's important that you start to make changes now, because there's not a way to say, okay, I'm this close to becoming a diabetic. If you are pre-diabetic, you really need to start implementing changes, reducing the sugar now, because it's eventually going to become diabetes. Cardiovascular disease. When we eat high amounts of sugar, our bodies release insulin to get excess glucose out of the bloodstream and into our cells. The higher the level of glucose in our blood, the higher the amount of insulin is released. When insulin is chronically high, it causes inflammation and damages the lining of our blood vessels, leading to a host of cardiovascular related concerns. And many of those we can tell when you have the visceral fat, that's the fat around the belly, that's the dangerous fat. So and that's usually when they say when you have the visceral fat, you need to be careful, because that is can be signs that you can have cardiovascular disease. Now we're talking about sugar, and some important things to know if we're in the store and we're shopping. We need to understand all foods have sugar, right? And so there's a glycemic index and a glycemic load. Now, your glycemic index, your GI, that talks about the quantity. It tells you how quickly food containing carbohydrates affect your blood sugar levels when eating by themselves. So that could be just like an apple. It has a number, orange has a number, right? So glycemic load includes quantity and quality. So it is a number that estimates how much food will raise a person's blood glucose level after eating. So your glycemic load accounts for how much carbohydrates is in the food and how much each gram of carbohydrates in the food raises your blood glucose. So if you're going to use either one of these, the best one to use would be the glycemic load. The glycemic index is good to know, so you can know how much sugar is in a particular food, right? And how soon it'll get into the bloodstream. But the glycemic load gives you a better and accurate number. So there's a formula. The GL formula is the glycemic load equals your GI, which is your glycemic index, times carbohydrates in grams, contained in a portion divided by 100. So we have an example here. So we have an apple. So a single apple has a GI of 38, and it contains 13 grams of carbohydrates. So our equation is 38 times 13 divided by 100 equals 5. So we're going to go up here to this chart for glycemic load, and since it's 5, it's low. So anything 10 and below is low on the glycemic load. Between 11 and 19 is medium, and anything above 20 is high. Now, if you look at the difference between the glycemic load and the glycemic index, your low for glycemic index goes all the way up to 55. So there's a big difference there between the low and the GL and the GI. Now, if you look at from 56 to 59 is medium, and then high is 70 and above. Now, remember, your glycemic index is just the number that tells you how fast the sugar will enter into the bloodstream. And there are calculations, in simple calculations you can pull up on your computer when you're in the store or when you're at home that will give you that information. So this is a glycemic index. The one I tell you is just a number that rates your food according to how fast the blood will enter into the bloodstream. And so, like we have grains. Now, the higher the number, the worse it is. So anything below 55 is low. Anything between 56 and 59 is medium, and anything above 70 is high. Now, just because it has a high number does not necessarily mean it's bad for you. Let's look at watermelon. Watermelon has a GI of 72. That's high, but watermelon is good for you. That just means you can't go sit down and eat a half a watermelon and that's it, right? Because the glycemic index is high. And those who are diabetic, pre-diabetic, you have to make sure that you're looking at your glycemic index and your glycemic load when you're eating foods. Because if you're going to have a smoothie, let's say we're going to make a smoothie, we're going to put pineapple, which is 66. Maybe we're going to have some spinach, which is 15. And let's say we put an orange in at 44. We're way past 70, right? And so if you're drinking that, it's sugar. It's a healthy sugar, but it's still sugar. And what's going to happen is your healthy smoothie is no longer healthy. It's just filled with sugar. And so you're going to drink that. And in so many words, the same thing's going to happen as if you ate a candy bar, but it's healthier. I don't know if that makes sense to you. It's sugar. So your insulin is going to spike and then it's going to drop. So you may have that smoothie and then you're still going to be hungry. So even if you're going to fix a smoothie, you need to make sure you incorporate proteins in your smoothie so we can get the what, not the complete faucet turn on, so we can get the slow drip to where we're getting that constant energy over a period of time. And so many people don't understand that, and they don't think that sugar's in their food because we don't read labels. We read everything else under the sun and we don't read labels. Now, listen, I get it. I had 3 kids when I went to the store. I want to get what I need to get. I need to get home. I need to cook because I was tired. But we're going to have to start putting more energy into our food and shopping. I'm not saying make it a whole big, okay, I need 3 hours out of the day to just sit and, figure out what I need to eat, go read labels. You can do that throughout the day, or as you can put it up on the computer, they'll give you a label just that quick on and how many sugars and what sugar is. There are 75 different names for sugar. And so that's why people are surprised. Most people are surprised to know that, okay, sugar is in everything. Yes, it just has a different name. And so that's why it's important that we start reading labels and start getting familiar with these names so that we're aware of what we're putting into our body. Okay, so let's discuss making changes. So the first thing we need to do is consume a more what kind of diet? Plant-based foods. It always comes back to plant-based foods because they have everything you need in them. Add fruits instead of sugars to your cereals or oatmeal. And you have to be careful with cereals. Cereals are packed with sugar, even your so-called healthy sugars. Your healthy cereals. Granola is filled with that, right? So you have to be careful and read the labels when you're out purchasing your food. Use extracts like vanilla, almond, and orange and lemon into your drinks and in your food. Spices, cinnamon, clove, ginger, and nutmeg. Cinnamon helps to suppress your appetite, which is really helpful. And another thing is to stay hydrated. Many people you're eating and you're not really hungry, you're just dehydrated. So you need to make sure you're drinking at least half of your body weight in water. So that way, that's the amount of water that you need for your body to function. Use unsweetened applesauce, honey, or agave in recipes instead of sugar. If you're on Pinterest or you're on YouTube, there are tons of different healthy, there's no way to not get a healthy recipe. They're all over the place. So instead of soda or juices, drink water or spritzers. I like to make spritzers. A lot of time people, it's hard for them because they want that carbonation from the soda. So if you get you some carbonated water, get you some cranberry juice, you have your nice little spritzer. Now, that's the same thing as what you buy in the store, but there's additional sugar in those bottled waters that have the carbonation water in them, or just the bottled water. There was a pineapple one that I really liked, and I looked on the back of it, and it had like 36 grams of sugar in it. And I was like, oh my goodness, but this is water. Water is supposed to be healthy for you. I can't drink it. It tastes good, but it was just too much sugar. Okay, compare food labels. Look at the lowest added sugar. You always want to look at, if it has 32, that is just a really large amount of sugar. 32 grams of sugar, 14 grams of sugar. Now, also it depends on what you're eating and how much of it you're going to eat. So you have to take that into account too when you're purchasing your food. Low fat, reduced calories, light, non-fat has a higher sugar content than the regular version. So if you're going to eat it, if you're going to treat yourself to it, you may as well just get the regular version. That's how they get us, is that we'll see low fat and we're like, oh, okay, so that's going to be better for us. It has less fat, but it has more sugar. And that goes back to the food science of things. You have to compromise somewhere in order to get that product out that you need. So we may say, okay, we're going to put low fat on here. So, because remember the fat craze, low fat, everything was low fat, and everyone was eating low fat and getting bigger because there's extra sugar in the food that you're eating. Eat balanced meals. Once you eat a balanced meal, you're full longer. You're not hungry. Many times we may grab something to eat and that just satiates you for a moment. And then we're back again looking to get something to eat. And I found myself having to like really revamp how I eat, how I exercise. Because, you know, once you become a woman of a certain age, things change. They just change. And I didn't know what to do with it, and I still don't know what to do with it. It's a process. And so, and the thing is, eating changes over our lifetime. We have to eat for what our body needs and where we are. So it's difficult at times, but we have to take time to study, to research, just like we do anything else. And I think it's that because it's food, we think, okay, I shouldn't have to put that much energy into food. But our food is not the same food that we had when we were younger. It's completely different. So it calls for us to have to do more research and to really look into things when we're talking about food. Lower stress level, exercise, yoga, and walking, and a minimum of 8 hours of sleep. And I put this little lady up here with her hands raised because, and she's saying, let's do this because it's difficult to cut back on sugar because majority of us are addicted. I mean, we may not want to believe it, but we are addicted. Even if it's just that much, addiction is addiction, right? We have to have it. And so we should take our time with this. And I'm not saying go and empty your cabinets. Each week, okay, I'm gonna have, if we are a cookie eater, okay, this week I'm gonna have 5 cookies over the span of the week. That's a cookie a day. Instead of sitting down in one setting, eating 5 cookies, right? There's a big difference. So you have to try to ease into it. Many people can, there's some people that can. I know some people who just say, I'm gonna stop, and they stop. Majority of us can't do that. So we have to see what works for us. Okay, if you're a soda drinker, okay, I'm gonna have a soda here. I'm gonna have one. I'm gonna try to make it last for a couple hours. Instead of having one, drink it up, and then here 2 hours later, you're looking for another one, a soda a day. And the thing is, you may think that's still a lot of soda if you're drinking a soda a day, but you can't just stop. You just can't cut sugar like that because you are addicted. And what's going to happen is you're going to get depressed. And you, okay, I had 2 sodas today. I may as well just give up. I'm not going to be able to do it. So we have to set goals that we can accomplish, attainable goals. Not, okay, I'm not going to have any soda ever again. And then tomorrow in the morning, you're like, I need a soda. So we have to think about, we have to have a strategy in order to make changes, not just for us, but for our families. I know this was a short one, but thank you for joining us today. And I have this little quote here that I really like to always think, when I think of food, I just like to think of being mindful. And it says, mindfulness is deliberately paying attention, being fully aware of what is happening, both inside yourself, in your body, heart, and mind, and outside yourself in your environment. Mindfulness is awareness without judgment or criticism. And that really resonates with me because many times we're so down on ourselves about everything under the sun. And when it comes to food, because it's personal, you can't make changes if you're constantly being judgmental or criticizing yourself for not being able to stay on a certain path that you would like to. It's every day, it's taking a step, it's making the effort, and it's holding yourself accountable. And so I hope that you enjoyed this presentation. Do you have any questions regarding, I'm pretty sure you do, regarding sugar or ways that you can reduce the amount of sugar that you consume? So I'm going to hand it back over to, wait, hold on. I'm going to hand it back over to you, Jonathan. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen.